So how you been? Wait a minute. This is a different view. Wait a minute. What is happening here? You switched your office around.
Uh, no, I think I have it on a different camera. I've got a few different it's on
Don't I
my
usually
Mac.
see the tapestry?
Oh yeah,
Hang.
I did switch it around then since then. That was like a month ago though. Boy, you haven't seen me in webcam form for over a month.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, this is good. I like it. Is that a sheet music stand?
Uh, yeah, there are sheet music stands over there. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, that's what I see.
yeah.
I it's been fun. The kids and I have been playing a ton of Rock Band.
Nice.
They're loving it, especially my daughter, because
Hmm.
she's just more like me. So it's usually her and I jamming, and I kind of oscillate between guitar and drums, and she
Hmm.
just does bass. She loves
Nice.
the bass, wants to play bass. She plays the bass part in all
Does she
songs.
do this?
She does a lot of, cool, and then, and she'll sing the chorus of a few songs. Like, so the easiest song on Rock Band 3 is I Love Rock and Roll by Joan
Sure.
Jett.
Yeah.
And it's very simple, very easy cadence, whatever. And she just, I don't even know if she's paying attention, but she just sings the chorus at the top of her lungs every time it comes around.
She might
And
not even know what she's saying, but she's singing it.
nope, exactly. And then there's this other song by like the Racconettes or something that's The Last Dance. And, this is the last dance. This is the last dance. Save the last dance for me or something. And she sings along as best she can. Oh, she has a gas. We have a lot of fun.
I used to do that with the boys when they were young. Now, not so much. But I was the drummer. I loved the drumming part.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, did I like to give her. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we had like whole families kind of nights and, two guitars going and the drums and the vocals and all that kind of stuff. But they're older. They don't want anything to do with me now.
Somebody else is here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we should actually talk about innovation or something. I wish I could see these other people. I wish I could dialogue with them.
You can actually, if you want, I think somehow.
I want them to say hi. I just came from Okanagan College where we had a great little, not impromptu because we set it up, but it was a chat with a few entrepreneurs. So we opened it up, didn't do a lot of publicity, but figured those who'd be interested to come would be there without a ton of push or misdirection or advertising. And it was great. We had an international student from Russia. We had an international student from Mexico and an international student from Vietnam. And those were the three students who decided to show up and have a chat about what entrepreneurship is with us. And fascinating stories. So the Russian kid, his name is Dare, which is cool. I'm like, oh, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, having the name Dare is awesome.
Yeah.
And then he does drop shipping, right? So, now we're back down to two. Somebody came and left.
Yeah. Like I'm done.
Yeah. Just fuck it. Oh man. Well, I wonder if we can split screen. I wonder what they see, or it's just me talking. Whoever's
No
talking.
idea, actually.
Whoever's talking, I think, takes the big screen for anybody listening.
I think I can control that. Anyway, keep talking. All
Yeah.
good.
And so this kid, he does drop shipping stuff, and he's got a few Shopify stores and things like that. So, and he's been making good money, and being a student, he likes living over here and stuff. And then we get to, and then the Mexican woman, she was a chartered accountant in Mexico. I think she lost her husband and has a 17-year-old daughter and said, screw it, I'm going to Canada. And so she just left. She's up here now. She's back in school to get her CP or CA or whatever. And her daughter's in grade 12, and it's just the two of them. And they just came up. And they're on she's on a study visa with her kid, and she's getting her. And I'm like, wow, like awesome. That's just the size of those balls.
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed. Like, and then the third one, oh my God, this girl Iris from Vietnam, who came from humble beginnings, and she wanted to break the mold. So she wanted to study internationally, but her parents didn't have the money. So she decided to make it for herself. So she reaches out to this company called Misfit, and they're a wearable technology company based in Sunnyvale in California. And so she's literally having conversations with the CEO because she's hunted him down, and he hires her and says, oh, well, you should just come and work for us. And so she's worked for them. And for 6 years, she's been saving every penny. So she's the amazing saver. And then Misfit got acquired by Fossil, who wanted to integrate it into their watches.
Sure.
And they kept her on. And then even when she raised enough money, she went to the bank, she took it out. She says she took it in cash. And she said it was a pile of Vietnamese dollars because it was like this. And she got it. She's like, I want to take it. I'm going to go study internationally. And she said, great. And she got it converted into Canadian, this much Canadian. And then when she came over, she said, screw it. I'm not even going to spend that. I'm going to put it in the bank. She went to Scotiabank. She put it in a savings account and then just said, I'm going to work. I'm not going to live off that. I'm going to keep it. And then so she's been working while she goes to school and has continued to build that nest egg up, not down, as an international student. She's just, it was inspiring. She is just crazy cool. And so now she's honed in on what her abilities are. It just, personal finance, organization, saving, she now wants to be an investor. That's her goal, is to continue to work and start things. And she wants to invest, whether it's real estate, mutual funds, whatever. She just thinks that she's really good with finance and managing money. So she wants to do this, but
that sounds awesome. I mean, doesn't that kind of describe, entrepreneurialism? It's like kahunas, bravery and grit. It'd be interesting, when you were working in China for the accelerator, and you worked with a ton of obviously a ton of startups. Like, could you tell right off the bat, which ones are going to be more successful than the others, just by kind of observing, how much grit or how much, how bold or how hard these people are actually busting it?
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%, the biggest percent you could possibly get. It was completely true. And like, I remember once, even back when we were doing it up in Dalian, before we grew up and went down to Shanghai and the whole thing. I had a guy, Zach Agion. I think I always mispronounce it. It's a French Agion or something like this. And he was building a company called Split Force. And Split Force was one of the first ones to do A/B testing on mobile, for mobile software.
Sweet.
And so, and he was with was it Unity mobile software engine? I think Unity is a game engine.
Yep.
And so he was developing it on, doing A/B testing on the Unity platform. And, there was something about him, right? Because he killed it, the batch, he raised the most money. But everything about him. So we had this guy come on. I wish I could remember his name. And he had done he was a mentor with Techstars, but he was brilliant at the financial modeling. And so we had him on a webcast for 2 hours of doing the financial modeling. And then he emailed over all his spreadsheets with all the formulas and all the tabs and said, here you go. This is everything you need. Just go in and start playing with them and manipulate all the numbers and make them your own. Awesome. So before I left that day, I emailed them out to everybody. I came in the next day and Zach was still there at 7:30 in the morning, hadn't slept, and had spent all night mastering those spreadsheets.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was like, immediately you're like, okay, like this guy this is what it takes. It's not every day. And like,
No.
I'm not a big proponent of the Gary Vaynerchuk hustle thing. Although Vaynerchuk is the OG of hustle, so I'll let him have it. The rest of them, I don't like this bullshit. But he had that, right? And he did well, and he killed it. His demo day was awesome. His company was Split Force. So at demo day, he had everybody in baby blue tracksuits with the banana peel and the whole thing. And he had hired a banana split ice cream company or something, and they were at the demo day, and he had hired all these people in these baby blue tracksuits with the split force thing on it, going around giving everybody banana splits.
Nice.
At demo day. Like, he was just such a hustler, but he was always in, and he just like, that was like, I was just like, yeah, like this is the guy. And he ended up selling to, getting acquired by, damn it, a company in, now I got to Google this, a company in Boston. Yeah, I'll find it. Acquisition. Let's see who did it. Of course, this is just not easy. Anyway, yeah, I'm getting all this weird kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, I misspelled something. But anyway, you can tell. You absolutely can tell. It's just like, this is why I'm all about the Localytics. They were acquired by Localytics cool, in Boston.
Well, I mean, it just kind of goes to show you, I mean, like, you know, and you think about, oh, all you have to do is work hard. You know, I think there's that false perception is like, you got to sleep under your desk every night. You got to do the 200-hour work weeks. I don't even know if there's 200 hours you can work in a work week, but I think there's, at least for me, you know, when I've gone through, you know, the startups and even when I was working at Corps, things get bad sometimes. Right. And I think it's kind of like, success is going to be determined by how much you can pick yourself off the floor after getting, you know, knocked out, and just go, okay, let's try that again. Right. Because not every day is just going to be the result of hard work, right? You're going to do all this hard work and you're going to go, crap, that was for nothing. Or, you know, you focused on the wrong spot, and it's heartbreaking, right? It's heartbreaking to say, I just spent a week doing testing on something I shouldn't have been testing on, right? Or going down a path or doing something that just was completely meaningless. And then you go, I don't get that week back. And now I'm a week behind where I thought I was going to be, right? And so, you know, that's kind of the struggle that I see for a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs as they're coming into this world, right? And that's the grit part that I was talking about. It seems like if they can, you know, get sand thrown in their face and all that other kind of good stuff, and actually wake up the next morning and say, hey, let's put in that effort again. I mean, hats off, right? I find myself going, Jesus, I'm too old for this stuff, right? You know, it's exhausting emotionally, physically, everything, mentally, the whole works.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's one of those upsides of the failure stuff, you know, that everybody talks about in startup land, and once you kind of get used to just things not going your way or going the way you thought they were going to go, sometimes vastly destructive ways of happening, you I don't know, you become numb to it. You know, the whole you know, the entrepreneur's armor is scar tissue, and it's kind of true, because those don't upend you. You know, they don't throw you for a huge loop. It's like, you don't know what's going to happen. The only thing you really just do know is that something's going to happen. And so instead of avoiding and wasting resources on avoiding issues or problems, you create processes to deal with them when they come, because they inevitably will come. So let's just be prepared to be able to withstand them when they arrive, both mentally, as a team, financially, economically, competitively, as a product or business, all those things.
Now, do you think it's why, you know, there's a report a couple months back that was saying that, you know, the average age of a successful startup founder is like 42, right? Something along that. Do you think that, you know, that it's a result of life experience and being able to say, listen, I know how to create those processes now, right? I know how to create those systems that allow me to kind of maybe take smaller bets and not get hit as hard, and have the right expectations going in, versus going in completely naive and overly positive, and then, boom, hitting it hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why suddenly boxers popped into my mind. I guess because you were talking about hitting. But I would think, those savvy, wily veterans of boxing, they just know how to not take the big knockout punch, right? They know how to protect themselves. They know, not to open themselves up and leave themselves, the open to chance of taking that massive uppercut that could immediately end the fight. They, probably last longer and longer in fights that they still lose, or, there's a decision against them. But it comes with age. It comes with, oh, it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, look at the last Mayweather and McGregor fight. Wasn't that a testament? You got this, this older Mayweather, and he just, just covered, knew that McGregor was just gonna pound himself out, tire out, start making mistakes, leave himself open, and then taking hit after hit after hit, and then it's like, okay, now I'm in control, right? Now,
yeah.
Now I'll start hitting back, and that strategy obviously
And
works.
it's so funny because this is what I find a lot of early stage, immature. Don't take this the wrong way, anybody who's listening to this later. Because they've got all full of piss and vinegar and bravado, and they want to yell and shout, and oh, we got covered by TechCrunch, or I wrote a blog post and it got featured in Hacker News or something, or whatever it is, and they're all about being out and being popular and getting things. And, even if they get that first seed round of funding or something, it's like, oh, I got 500,000, 600,000. And then of course they're off, renting the most luxurious office space in town. And it's like the veterans are kind of like, yeah, you may want to, enjoy it while it lasts, I guess, because it's not going to last. And, your comeuppance is coming, but good on you. Celebrate the win while you can, but you will almost inevitably overdo it and count your chickens way before they hatch. It's just, there's a process. There's a growing up.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also is compounded with, other types of social pressures too. I mean, if you take a look at, either of us when we were super young, whatever, we take risks, all we had to pay for was booze, right? Or just,
the 1800s were a good time.
You know what I mean? But it's kind of like, whatever, I'll just, I'll take the risks. I'll do what it takes. I'll work the 100-hour weeks. And, I know that I did for sure. But then, once you do this a few times, and you're going through this again, you start having these other social pressures, like you have wife, you have kids, you have, you want to contribute to college and university, and you have a mortgage payment and all that other kind of stuff. And all of a sudden you start being, super conservative, and maybe looking at risks a little differently. And I wonder if it's good or if it's bad. Sometimes I work with organizations that says, you don't understand, we're a risk intolerant organization. And I'm like, I think that's good, because doesn't that force you to take smaller risks and show traction incrementally versus, hey, I'll give you $1 million for your idea, go for it, versus tell you what, get to this gate, show me these numbers, I'll give you a little bit more money, and then work really hard to give that focus. But I do struggle, because I have seen a number of startups that are founded with people with families, and the founder's cave. There's a, we both know that the fastest overnight success is like 7 years, right? It takes a long time. It's, you can go from an idea to traction, but it's not going to be, you're not buying an island in, off the coast of Tahiti in a couple of months. It's a slog, and everything that we see in the news is really just that last mile that that everybody's been on, and like, thank God we've done something, right? But we don't know the years that they've spent, getting up to that point.
Well, and so, and here's an interesting thing. So I'm part of the Okanagan Entrepreneurs Organizing Committee of the Meetup group, right? So, and we helped for anybody interested, do an event last night with the League of Innovators, which is the fallout of the next big thing breaking up. And the next big thing was what Ryan Holmes from Hootsuite created to help the young entrepreneurs, the 15 to 25. And so the next big thing is an accelerator. Didn't really kind of work, but League of Innovators is something that's more virtual, a little bit lighter, easier to scale. I think it's going to be easier to run for the group that started the whole idea. And so we did this event, and there was a couple of people out there talking about the neurotic nature of creation. And it got me what you were just saying about the 7-year, as we know, kind of timeline or average age of a company that experiences a liquidity event. And I'm trying to tie this all back to, even if you do IPO or get acquired, you know, if there's an M&A or an IPO, usually, for those of you who don't even realize it, it's even longer than that, because you're gonna have golden handcuffs for probably at least a couple years after that, even still. And so you're going to be with this venture for 9 years. So which is a struggle for a lot of creatives, because I know a couple of very successful entrepreneurs, even here in town, who are desperate to get away from what they've built, because it's just like, they're the creative. They like the conceptualizing, the starting out, the what if, can this make it? Can this actually survive? Can we build a business up of this? Can we scale it up? It's already up. They've got 100 employees, you know, it's doing 5-10 million in revenue a year. Like it's, or more. It's just in Canada, they have a lot of tax credits to cover salaries. So, you know, they are profitable. You know, but they're bored. And they're not excited about what they're doing. They're anxious to get out, and it's kind of hurting their business. And they're actually struggling now because they built something they can't actually get away from now. And yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting thing that I've started noticing. And, you know, like, oh, maybe I can just take my company public and this and that, or, you know, get acquired. It's like, listen, you're saying this because you want to start a fund and be an investor. You're tired of what you're doing. Anything you're talking about right now is going to require your involvement for at least a few more years. You can't just you just can't jump ship. Nobody's they don't just want the company. They want you at the helm. You are the driver. You can't just leave.
That's exactly it. And you know, I've been in that exact same position before as well. It's kind of like, you know, you get addicted to the curiosity, right? You're curiosity driven. So it's kind of like, ooh, you know, sparkly thing. And it's not a distraction. It's actually curiosity. It's kind of like, ooh, I think I could solve that problem. I think I want to do that. And as a founder, it's kind of interesting because you start off with such focus and such passion, right? And clearly, you know, you emanate that to everyone around you. So even if you have co-founders or whatever, you know, you typically have this founder syndrome where you're the brain, right? Or you and your partner, your founders, they're the brain. Everybody else are the arms and the legs and the heart and all that other kind of stuff, but you're the brain, right? And you work really hard at being the brain, right? All the creative energy, all the discipline, all the hard work, you know, when everybody else is sleeping, you're still up trying to figure out, you know, something. And then you start to scale. And that is the worst thing possible when you're trying to scale, right? Because you're actually, in order to scale, you have to make other people the brain. And you've never learned that role before. You've never gotten up in the morning and go, my job is to make sure that I'm not needed so that I can spend time doing, you know, my superpower type stuff. I see so many startups, you know, and not just startups, but scale ups or whatever you want to call them, just fall over and just hit this plateau because the brain doesn't want to stop being the brain.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. All right. Yeah. That hits kind of close to home. And there are, you know, there's a situation going on even relatively close to me that this is kind of the case. And it is hard. I mean, this is something that I think VCs probably don't like getting in at the early stage because they don't know if this is going to be the type of person who can transcend level to level to level as the company grows up to continue to I don't know, to grow past, to continue to replace yourself. Like the CTO has to literally at some point realize they're never going to do any more coding on this product, or they shouldn't, right? That they should be actually architecting or hiring or managing or even out promoting. You know, just you just kind of got to hand things off. You have to be tied, and this just helps. You know, where we talk about being in love with solving the problem, not in love with the product or the idea, right? And again, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, I built this, but you know, I'm off to achieve more and more of what the actual dream is. If it's more and more of the product, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to hand that off and replacing yourself consistently. You're going to have to hire above you, not below you.
But isn't this all about psychology? I mean, like seriously, you know, I remember like 20 years ago, I remember, you know, my first startup was when I was still in university and I wasn't thinking very clearly. Despite some success, boy, was that an idiotic thing to do. But my first real startup, you know, started in 1997. And I remember even back then going, okay, I've got this fancy degree in computer science and I know all this technology, but what I really need is a degree in psychology, because shit, if it wasn't for these humans, this would actually be an easy job, right? You know, the psychology around how to convince people to use your software, right? The psychology of being able to communicate clearly in a way that doesn't cause friction or anything like that. Like they don't teach you this stuff. And it's kind of interesting how I think in accelerators, they do, right? Accelerators have kind of, good accelerators, that is, have started to kind of be this new form of education that has taken into account, the realities, the soft skills and all this other kind of stuff, you know, being human and being a founder at the same time, which you just don't get from any other, organization or structure, right?
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with even programming around a lot of these things. That's difficult. I mean, teaching somebody how to do financial modeling is fine. It's kind of a one and done. Once you get it, you got it, fine, right? Legal, okay. It's a bit of an ongoing process as you grow up and more and bigger things have to happen. But once you get attuned to the learning curve of the legal of starting a business, things that okay, fine, that we can teach too. But man, the other stuff, the soft stuff, the between the ears, day-to-day translation, messaging, things like that. That's where it is. The psychology is the big thing. And of course, what a lot of these people are really good at, and don't ever confuse yourself for Steve Jobs, anybody, but knowing the human behavior of your customers and having just a good instinct. I think if there's anything I'd love to invest in, if I could measure it, was relational instinct to your customer and knowledge of your customer. If founders have that, how well do you truly understand your customers and are able to anticipate their actions and their purchasing habits? How can we measure that? If you're good at that, holy fuck, we will figure the rest out. But if you're good at that,
interesting though, right? Because take a look at some of the ones, take a look at Evernote, right? Those guys, that was plan B, right? Evernote's plan B because they needed, they were their first customer. Isn't that an interesting way? Look at Slack. I mean, Slack's pretty awesome. It's pretty great. Slack's plan B. Slack was like, we got to solve our own itch. And it's kind of interesting because one of the things that I look for when I work with founders is, have you experienced this pain before? I've seen so many people like, I'm going to solve, this problem. They've never experienced before. They've heard about it. They've read about it in the news. They might have a friend who's done it, right? But they haven't been through it. They haven't empathized, with the people they're trying to solve a problem for. I mean, smart people, but there's always going to be an empathy gap there because they haven't truly experienced it themselves, right?
Yeah. 100%. It reminds me of something that Dave McClure said, and I know he's somewhat ostracized in the community because of some behavior. but what he said was actually what I thought was really cool. I think I may have mentioned this to you before. We had him come and speak because when I was with SOSV, we were an LP in 500 Startups First Fund. And so we got to know Dave and how he worked. And we kind of learned a lot about how to run an accelerator that churned out at least multiples, if not profits, hopefully soon. And he came to an event, and somebody in the audience asked him, they said, "Oh, we know you have a daughter." At the time, she was about 7 or 8. And, is she learning how to code? And Dave correctly rephrased the question and said, "Do I have a daughter?" "Yes," you know, this and that. He's like, "I think what you're asking me though is learning how to code valuable? Do I think it's important?" That's really what you're trying to get at and get from me. He said, yes, in the context of learning any new language is valuable. What do I think it's going to be an important factor in her being successful as a potential entrepreneur, a startup founder in their future? No. And he said, in his opinion, that he felt understanding human behavior was going to prove to be much more, like the psychology again, proved to be much more valuable to her in the future. Whereas in his opinion, technology or coding, programming was probably going to go the route of a commodity, of something that humans probably wouldn't need to actually have to do in the future themselves. Yeah. Design would probably be the next frontier, and then eventually that would also be known by computers, where an app on Joel's phone, the UI UX and the way it's everything about it, the way it's programmed, was decided when Joel, as a known entity, decided to get it, and then it was created for just Joel. And by the same with Todd on Todd's phone. When the app arrived and was downloaded, it was designed as it was downloaded to fit my tastes and preferences and instincts, because Hotjar as an operating system or something just knew what I did, right? It just something like that. But I don't know. That was so profound to me. I was like, wow, you don't need to learn coding, or you should, but it's just like learning French or Spanish. Understanding human behavior is the key. I don't know. That's very interesting.
I totally agree. And, we put a lot of emphasis, we being the industry, in design thinking. If you think about just the practices around design thinking, it starts with one word, empathy, right? And then gets into testing, so even when there is empathy and strong empathy, you still should have a mechanism for validating those hypotheses, right? Mm-hmm. And I've actually fallen, this has been my worst failures in my entire career, is when I thought I had the right empathy because I was the person I was targeting in my product, right? Mm-hmm. And then we start kind of charging out, and you literally work for months with your team, and you release it, and you sit there and you watch the downloads, and you're like, okay, no one's downloading or no one's logging in. And you're like, let's try this type of tweet. And then you start to sweat. And, after a few days, I'm like, holy crap, right? What am I not saying? What are we missing? And then you start immediately thinking about features. Oh, maybe I'm missing this feature, or that feature, or this feature, or that feature. When in reality, we just totally missed the mark in terms of, who we're trying to provide value to. And we made so many wrong assumptions, and we waste 6 months of effort, right? And then you're like, crap, let's go in and do something that we didn't do before, which was, let's go and talk to customers, right? Relearn those interviewing skills and ask questions differently, and not just talk to the people who are going to feed us the positive reinforcements. Oh, sure, I would need that app. Yeah. But really trying to understand which problem we're trying to solve. And to me, that's when my entire world changed, right? Which is, I think I'm a smart guy. I think I can empathize with what I'm trying to do, but I'm, at best wrong most of the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Hitting somebody on the street and saying, hey, would you like to look better? Sure. Yeah. Okay, guys, quit your jobs. We're doing a diet app. Yeah, it's going to be huge. I just got confirmation. Man,
Yeah.
No. He just, objection, Your Honor, leading the witness. Yeah, that's not allowed. But and I fall prey to it too. I think we always do. Even now, me dabbling in drop shipping and having some fun with that and creating ads and copy that I think are great and funny or interesting, and watching 700 impressions with a relevancy score of 9 on Facebook and not a single sale, like nothing. And it's just like, what are we doing wrong? Like, I mean, everything seems to line up. We should be selling these things, and it's not working. And I don't know. It's just, I mean, what you and I, what we think shouldn't matter. And again, that's the constant when working with startups, driving them towards be committed to solving a problem. Because if you're not, you're going to take such a long, circuitous route to the answer every fucking time, because it's going to have to hit you over the head. And, instead of you just like swallowing your pride and asking somebody and hearing what you didn't want to hear.
Well, it's funny because I think about our education system, and like I'm trying to do a lot of work in helping rethink our education system. We put so much pride into getting things right. And now, don't get me into, we got to promote failure, but what we really do is we really pride getting shit right. You get an A when you get everything right. And so we're always kind of driven to trying to achieve this state all the time, and trying to, even emotionally, I mean, it feels good when you get an A and you get a sticky or whatever, right? And to actually go in and take an idea of yours or whatever and look at it from a different lens becomes scary. It becomes hard work. What do you mean I have to talk to like 25 customers? Like, I don't think anybody will talk to me. And I always use that line. It's like, well, if you can't get 25 people to talk to you about their problem, how the hell are you going to sell your product to anyone, right? Ask yourself
words
that.
are easier than money. If you can't get words, you ain't getting money.
Yeah. I mean, and so even to this day, I mean, you just kind of have to swallow that pride and ask those hard questions, but it's just so against our human nature. I mean, we're always looking for those positive reinforcements. I mean, even just from a behavior therapy perspective, and you're a parent, you're a great parent, and that you reward good behavior, right? And so we tend to shy away from the opposite. I'm not saying that it's bad behavior to go and get, criticism of your idea or criticism of the problem you're trying to solve, but we still try to shy away from it and are always looking for that positive reinforcement side of things, right?
Yeah. Talk is cheap.
Yeah.
Which is great for startups. So go get people talking. Yeah.
You don't have any time or money, right? So what's the thing you can do is the most effective thing.
Yeah, but you can talk. You can go and speak.
I mean, how many times have you talked with a startup or someone who's come to you is like, I've got this idea, right? I've been working on this idea. I got some mocks. All I need to do is like code it up and put it in the app store. And you're like, sounds good.
But that's where I'm like, you and I would both be like, oh, okay, where do I start? It's just,
how can I crush your
bad,
dreams?
All right. So much work to do. Oh, those are the most difficult. And that's it's the old litmus test. I mean, I wrote a somewhat contentious blog post at one point, I don't know, maybe a year ago, where I was saying, I mentor a lot of companies and I'll walk in and, we'll be taking our jackets off, putting on our bags, and, we wouldn't have met before first meeting, and I'll kind of innocuously over the shoulders, like, so what is it that you guys do anyway? And I create this super casual way of doing it because I want them unknowingly to give me the truth. Mm-hmm. And the truth is how they approach their answer. And it starts with either talking about their idea or product or problem and issue that they're trying to solve. And that immediately tells me, which direction this next hour meeting is going to take. And I got some pushback from some people. Some were like, oh, you shouldn't, mislead them, or, this, I don't understand how that, that helps you, this and that. And, it's like, it's just, I said, it just tells me where I need to start, in a way of which path. Because if you start by saying, well, when I was 18, I was, my parents were, hurt in a car accident by a drunk driver, and it really impacted my life. My dad couldn't work for, years after that, and whatever, and it's just like they start down this story of, their existence and why they're there. And I'm like, oh man, like this is going to be great then, because then everything, they're going to be so coachable. Like, and this now as my time is going to be worth something, because, they're all ears, I can already tell. Whereas, oh, we've built this amazing product that does this and this and this and this and that. I'm like, oh God, like my time is the more they talk about their product, the more I see a devaluation of my time, or a dilution of my impact that I can have. Every word that comes out of my mouth is like reducing my impact by 10%, which now I'm looking at my next hour of sitting with them going, oh, okay. So we're just going to talk about minute little, inch something forward, inch something else forward. Yeah.
Well, you bring up a good point, because I'm in the same boat. I mean, this happens all the time, right? You kind of have this, yeah, here I go. So how, and it's funny because we both know Steve Forte, right? And I think to myself, what would Steve do? And he'd be like, stop it. I don't want to talk to you. Whereas we're freaking Canadian, and we're like, okay, we'll just let them talk and try to find, it's like, hey, have you done this? Have you thought about that? It's like, oh, keep that, and off you go. Like, at what point do you just cut through the chase and say, listen, I really think you're too focused on the solution. I don't think you have a problem to solve yet. If you don't even have a problem, how the hell are you going to sell this thing? I mean, I think, I'll give you another example. I was talking to a customer the other day who was, they have this forward-facing web page where they take registrations and stuff like that. And they get just bombarded with mass registrations, and it prevents people who are trying to register individually. They got bots registering, right? So they're like, oh, we're going to create this AI that analyzes the stream of the flow of the registrations and stuff like that. I'm like, why don't you put a CAPTCHA on it? I'm like, what? Let's put a CAPTCHA. So, your bots can't actually do it. They're like, oh. Like I just,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but they were so energized about what they could do with AI. I'm like, yeah, but
it's just a little plug-in thing. It's actually turnkey. Take you 5 minutes.
Yes, just do that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's and it's funny because I never want to really destroy enthusiasm for product, because I'm as guilty as anybody who just kind of loves product design and coming up with, I don't know, I like tests, really. I like why don't we test this? Why don't we test that? Why don't we test this? Because I mean, your famous saying, which I love, is, don't guess, measure, right? So it's really just coming up with the best tests that give you the best data, which are really just the best answers. And isn't that all we want, is just to reduce the amount of time that we spend guessing and more time effectively building?
Well, and this is what pisses me off about the term minimal viable product, right? So I worked with, whether or not you're a startup or you're an innovation team within an organization, to them, it's the smallest feature set that they could release, right? And it's kind of like, okay, technically it means that, but what you're really trying to do is the minimal amount that you can do to run some experiments. So, I'll even use the term MVP for wireframes. It's just a really low fidelity MVP so that I can actually run some tests, right? And I hate the term now. I'm actually trying to change my vocabulary to not even bring it up, to say, listen, let's create a minimal viable test, right? What's the smallest thing that we could do? Like, not that will take weeks. What could we run this week or tomorrow that would actually test this? You know, could we throw something up on Twitter and pay $5 in ads that, you know, test something, you know, does an A/B test for vocabulary or something like that, right? And just getting people to think that way versus struggling with, oh, it's got to have that feature. Oh, that guy said he wouldn't buy it if he doesn't have that feature. Like, none of that matters, right? Only people's behaviors, measured behaviors really matter. You know, how many times have you heard startups going, yeah, I've talked to 15 customers and they all love the product. They're all, you know, said they would buy it when they come on. I was like, do you have their credit card number for a pre-order? It's like, oh, we couldn't do a pre-order. Well, why couldn't you do a pre-order if they, you know, if they loved your product so much, tell them to give them your credit card number. Well, they wouldn't do that. Well, I don't think they're going to buy your product then.
Yeah, it's amazing even today in today's day and age how the people are afraid, and I'm guilty too, man. Like, you're good at this. You're good at the validation through currency, right? You're such a hard ass about it, and it's great. It's exactly how you need to be. I'm terrible at it. I would fall into the camp of probably of lying to myself in some way, of not getting the actual currency locked in, right? Yeah. And it's like, no, I'm good at reading people. I could tell by the way they said they were interested that they really meant they were interested. But it's, you know, but it's again, the whole currency. And I think, you know, I don't know if it's, I really loved Lean Startup Machine back in the day, making the comeback with the javelin. But, you know, I loved them because that was their whole thing. You have an assumption about problem people have, or the kind of people that have the problem, one or the other, right? And you kind of need to go validate both. We need to validate that this problem exists. Okay, great. Who does it exist for? These kinds of people. Okay, now we got to go validate that. Okay, we validated that these are the kinds of people that have this kind of problem. Perfect. Now we can start testing on product, but we cannot start testing on solution until we validated problem in person, or, you know, and but you have to do it with currency. And I mean, for anybody that's listening or interested, currency comes in so many different forms, right? Email, phone number, time, come do a focus group, whatever. You know, I don't know, give me your scarf. It's cold out here. Just prove to me that you're actually interested, whatever it is. But, you know, that all matters. It's just, that's people doing. It's people doing. You know, it's you know, the whole CX thing is like, measure what people do, not what they say. And that's key. So you say you're interested. Great.
Yeah.
Can't, well, no bueno.
Yeah. Well, you know, and I think there's, I'm doing some work with some universities and some researchers, and you start to think, well, it's different in pure research. And I think to some degree, yeah. I mean, and academia, sometimes you don't necessarily need to think about those kinds of, you are coming up with a solution, but interestingly enough, you're coming up with a solution to a problem. So there's always this root of a problem. So, you know, even if you're a chemist and you devise some sort of new type of membrane that lets oxygen pass through it, you know, whatever. Okay, but you came up with that idea because of a problem. What was that problem, right? And then let's kind of circle back with that. And that's also one of the things I've seen as well, is that I think there's a tremendous amount of quote unquote innovation and invention in educational institutions and academia, but the language that's being used is for getting grants and research and all that other kind of stuff, and is, you know, disproportionate to what consumers or other, you know, even entrepreneurs need to listen to. Is like, well, what problem are we solving with this great invention, right? And but it always comes back down to problem. It always comes back down to, you know, we're inventing something because something is deficient in some way, right? And whether or not we're exploiting it in terms of creating a corporation or a licensing model around it or whatever, but we're still trying to solve a problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes down to, I think, again, back in the conversation, human behavior, what motivates people. I mean, you're doing a startup, or innovation, okay? So it's new. Anything new is going to replace something. It's either going to replace old, or it's going to replace something else is different, right? Even if it's time you were going to take a nap. Like it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to worm its way into your business or to your lifestyle or to your purchasing or your whatever. And so it has to be, again, I use what you say. We're talking about the painkiller vitamin thing. This is where I'm going with this, right? Like, is it a need or is it a nice to have or need to have, right? Vitamins are nice to have, but you don't find people, at 2 a.m. rushing to, the 24-hour Walgreens or, Shoppers Drug Mart to get a vitamin.
Yeah.
Okay? But they are nice and they help. But man, if I've got a splitting headache or I've got even heartburn and I'm like, oh, I can't sleep, I have got to get something, and like rushing for the Pepto, or the Tums or whatever. I mean, those are often need to have, and it's, that's where it's a problem. That's where, if you're doing a startup, that's where you want to be. You want to be heartburn.
Yeah, you want to be something that solves a real pain. Well, it's kind of interesting, when we talk about all this hypothesis and experimentation, we talk about lean startup or customer development methodologies or whatever, what have you. It's science, right? That's kind of the scientific method. Scientists go, yeah, that's kind of what we do. We have a hypothesis, we kind of put some structure around and then we test it. Yep, that's what we do. That's what science is. And even if you think about the birth of things like A/B testing, right? What Target was doing and using data, early on. I have a hypothesis that if I put these products together or whatever, or using data to actually, change people's behaviors. We see this in marketing quite a bit. That's kind of where all this stuff happened. And then we start getting into this with software. Is like, can we run experiments, living live software that allows us to learn as we go, and keep on finding that value. But it really is about loving the problem and then turning your hypothesis, which you could still love, right, into a set of experiments that you can quickly run effectively and have literally someone else almost like reproduce, right? And it's really tough as being a mentor. I've worked with a lot of other mentors, and it's really rare to see a really good mentor who really understands the nature of what that startup is trying to do and how they're approaching it versus falling in love with the problem as well. I've seen that happen so much where you get this really talented mentor, and they come in and there's the pitch and they're like, oh yeah, I love this. And and then they just kind of go back and, oh, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. Is that mentoring? I don't think it is, because it's a team member. They're jumping in and helping them solve the problem versus sitting back and saying, listen, I think you're on the wrong path. I need to back you up. And you might not want to hear this, but you got to back up.
Yeah.
Right.
I think great mentorship is a lot of things, but one of is just you're the one who keeps everything honest. It keeps, development honest, decisions honest, hypotheses honest, data honest, decisions honest. Keeps the founders honest. And I think a great mentor will understand, see the bigger picture and the bigger path and the whole vision and mission of really what's going on here. And it's their job to stay there and make sure that they intercede at all the right points to make sure that that everybody doesn't lose track of that. And
so what do you do when you got this startup or whatever, this team, talented, they're onto something, right? You kind of fall in love with the idea as well, but you also know that they're just not looking at it correctly. And so you position it. So I'm working with this one customer who launched a physical device in the US, targeting a particular market, and was flying off the shelves. And they're like, great, we're going to do this in Canada, but they're actually targeting they're not even targeting the same consumer market. They're targeting like different usage. And they're like, oh, now we're going to start pushing into production and all these devices. I'm like, whoa, right? We're like, no, we know our product has value because it's flying off the shelves over there. I'm like, but there's different customers over here. They're using it for different reasons. We have no idea. We hope that, we're going to see the same success. But what's the smallest thing we can do right now to even test whether or not those people, which by the way, are not the same category of people at all, would actually be, they might have the same need, but they might have completely different buying patterns. They might have completely different price points, right? And they go, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. And then they tell you what you want to hear just to make you shut up as a mentor. And then you talk to them again in a couple of weeks and they're like, yeah, we're still, we don't know why we're not selling, we made this huge batch run and we lost a lot of money and no one's buying them. I'm like, but what do you do as a mentor?
You focus on process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great mentor is about, is understanding good process for these group of people in this industry, in this product, and this problem, and all this kind of stuff. But it's about, I think it's being a hard ass for figuring out the good process, and then can we replicate and scale the process, and being just a hard ass about process. I'm not going to be comfortable with just giving my stamp of approval for you guys to move forward until we've really nailed this process of discovery and validation, discovery and validation, because it's as you want to move into a new market segment, as you want to move into a new geography, if you want to move into a new, demographic, it is going to require us using that same process. So I want to help you find the right process. I want to help you see it as a process and then fall in love with the process the way you should, so that we can achieve similar data and success and growth each time we go to the next level, which is, scaling and growing.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the word level, because so, we've heard the term product market fit, right? How do you know you're a product market fit? What are the indicators? What's the finish line look like? And I think that there's a barrage of different answers to that question, right? It's like, how do we know that when we've passed it, we know, okay, we've hit this milestone, therefore we can do something else.
Right.
And then is there anything along the way to product market fit that we can work with? So I've worked with a lot of founders that are all over the map, right? And then they're like, yep, all we need to do is scale. What product market fit? I'm like, that's great. Sounds awesome. But what do you mean? I don't even know what you mean by product market fit, right? And they can't even tell me, right? They're just like, wow, we got 4 customers and we've launched, so we're at product market fit. There's all sorts of different things, right? So what I've done is, and being able to cite other people's work, it's not all my own, because it's easier to cite a book author who's written about it, because apparently they're smart after you write it down. As an author, it was beneficial to me a few times in my career, and I wrote about it. I know this stuff, right? But because I don't have a book on this stuff, I have to cite other people. But to break this down, one of the first stages is customer problem fit. I'm like, I'll tell you what, I mean, you might be on your way to product market fit, but do your customers, are they aware of the problem you're trying to solve? Do they really have it? And how do you know that? Like, that's a good question. Well, they've said on Twitter they'd like this product. I'm like, yeah, but there's a different way. So giving them that level, that finish line, and helping them put it in the sand and says, okay, if you do these things, you will get past that finish line, right? And then, okay, I'm here. And then, okay, so what's the next thing? Well, is your solution actually a solution to that problem, right? Or is it a solution to a different problem? And getting them through these stages to kind of break down this long path of product market fit into these gates that they can at least focus on. Because that's one thing I've seen it with most founders and most founding teams, is that they're doing everything, right? They're just all over the bloody place. And then they go, I'm working so hard, I'm getting burnt out. I'm like, because I think half of what you're doing is the wrong thing, right? I wonder what would happen if you put all of your effort into the right thing. Maybe, you would be more rested and more healthy and make better decisions and all that other kind of stuff, right? So I find as a mentor, I spend so much more time helping them decide what not to do.
Yeah.
To do, right?
Yeah. No, that's 100%. And again, it's interesting because you're not helping them with product. You're not helping them with finances. You're not helping them with tech. You're working on basically their brain and the decisions that their brains are making, and their way their brains are working or attacking the product or the company or the hiring or the issues, or it's just it's all about the approach, and I mean, I know I'm in love with my own little term philosophy, but it's kind of about, because philosophy is a big encompassing way of, it's just approach. It's the way you think, it's the way you feel, it's the way you approach, it's the way you operate, it's the way you test, the way you validate. There's a philosophy around, and I haven't nailed what it is, because I think it's a whole bunch of things, and it's not easy to understand. That's why there's probably not a ton of philosophers or a lot of people who know a ton of philosophy, like generic philosophy, but it's I think just a good mentor is just a good guide. It's a good teacher. It's just, and even for me, I don't know if I have never been a hugely successful founder, unless, and I didn't even come up with China Accelerator. I was just the biggest engine behind it, for 4.5 years. And I don't know. Yeah,
well, you bring up a really good point. I mean, do you go to only successful founders and bring them in as mentors? I think about
right.
sports,
No.
right? Is the greatest sports coach the best athlete? I don't.
Right. Exactly.
No, right.
And it's what sucks though is that I feel bad because too many assholes out there who are fucking in love with themselves because they can make fun of those who teach because they say they can't do. And that's a shame. That's a fucking shame, because asshole, if nobody was there to actually teach you, you would never have been able to do in the first place. So you know what? Get off it. It takes a special talent to fucking sit back and teach, because those who do get and deserve a lot of the glory. But man, if it weren't for those who recognize and were willing to go teach instead of chasing the fame and glory to do, a lot of what was done wouldn't actually get done. And I don't know. It's been a struggle for me. I've always wanted to see if I could be the successful founder of big companies. And I don't know, jury's out. We'll see. Who knows? Until I die, it's not over. But for now, I'm still pretty happy and secure being the teacher, and being the mentor.
And it's funny. I think I've been talking about this for a while. Is that as I reflect upon my life, I'm from a small town. I'm short. So I have two bad things going for me. I've got short man syndrome and small town syndrome, right? And here I am trying to kind of prove to everybody how smart I am. So, the first couple of decades of my career, maybe the first decade, I guess, was really about trying to prove how smart I was, right? I wrote a whole bunch of books, and I would write articles. I was speaking at conferences, and it was there to kind of fill this insecurity that I had, about, where I came from. I'm positive it. Well, so says my therapist, perhaps. I don't even know. And then things changed, right? So you're like, okay, I've done all that. I don't feel different, right? I don't feel successful. Oh, look at you. You're a published author 4 times over. I've been doing the speaker circuit, and I go, yeah, this is exhausting though. Right. I actually don't feel like I've achieved anything yet. So what's next? Right. And then it comes down to, oh, let's show people how much money I can make, right? Let's be the founder. Let's sell. Let's, get the VC money. And all of a sudden it's, what I thought there were these prizes of landing venture or selling. You realize those were handcuffs, right? Those were horrible things in my life, right? They caused me the most stress. And, I don't, they weren't the most positive things, and that's the other thing too, is we seem to have this race for ventures. Like, oh, I'm going to go get VC. I'm going to go get funded. I'm like, just careful, right? You might not need it. And when you get venture, it's like getting married again, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about that, divorce is still divorce in both of those cases. It's not going to end well. Like when the VC wants their 10x back from their investment, shit goes crazy, right? And it's not a good crazy.
Yeah.
And so you get through that and you go, oh, whew. And then the deep realization was, I think I've always been a teacher. It's funny because every time I learn something new, I just want to tell people about it, right? I read something in a book, I say, oh, I got to tell people. I'm going to find someone who's online right now and tell them what I just learned. And, my curiosity aspect turns into this passion for communicating and teaching, right? And sooner or later, I think you just kind of embrace that shit, right? You just have to say, you know what? Yep, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just a difference of a bit of a difference of philosophy, but a difference of people. I keep thinking like, you're wandering, wandering the desert, and with a bunch of people, and you're off, and then you find this little pool of water, and or food like a carrot. You could eat the whole carrot, or you could like run back, waving it, telling everybody you found a carrot, and you can't wait to share it with everybody. And everybody's going to be super happy that you found a carrot. And it's just, I don't know, it's the weirdest metaphor or some whatever. But I don't know. It is like that. And I mean, and like I describe it where even, I'm the guy at Christmas who likes to put a lot of thought and choose good gifts. And I get super excited watching people open up gifts that matter, and that are thoughtful and useful. Right. I'm big on the useful. It's like, I remember 8 months you were saying this and this and that, and I remembered, and then I saw this and I thought it'd be perfect. They're like, oh my God, yes, it is. It's totally perfect. But man, I get uncomfortable and awkward when people give me gifts. Yeah. I don't like opening it. I don't feel like, it's too much. You shouldn't have done this. I don't know what to say. Thank you. But it's just a train wreck of an experience. I'm never good at it. But then I'm like that little kid on sugar when other people, I'm like, open it. It's the best, No, it's mine. Open mine. I like giving. It's just me. And, I am now at the point where I'm just trying to own it. I know.
Well, I think the human story is really the interesting element. I love the aha moments, right? And I love the look on people's face. And I've had 2 or 3, like just 2 or 3, not many. I'd be speaking at a conference in the days of, I was talking about application lifecycle management, about how to develop software better, right? And I'm not a very smart person, so I always like to boil things down, just simple things, simple ways of achieving things. And so
there's that Canadian again.
Yeah, and I remember, I think Steve Forte and I were doing like an all-day session on something, agile something. And a year later, this guy came back to me and says, I don't know if you remember me, but I was in your class last year, and like we're talking about like 150 people in the class, right? So I would be surprised if I picked him out. He says, but I took everything you said and I completely changed my company around. I'm like, holy shit, you listened to me? Like that's the amazing part here, right? You don't actually suspect sometimes that people will read your book or
Bezos, was it? Well, that's amazing. I didn't know anybody was listening.
So I'm going to use you as a first case study. That's phenomenal. But and there's just been a few handfuls of that where people have come back over long periods of time. It's like, I sat through this one thing and there was such a light bulb, and it doesn't take much, but then you start going, boy, I hope there's someone out there, right, that just has a light bulb. And I don't even necessarily need to know about it, but I know that for me, there's been a few light bulbs on, I'd be listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast or something like that, right? And I just have to pull over. I'm like, holy shit, right? You know, whoa, how did I miss this? How, you know, and they have completely changed some aspects of thinking, right? And then I'll just do a deep dive, right? And, you know, go read the 4 books that the guest had written or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, right? This is just amazing.
Well, you know what? And that might be a good bow on this conversation, because I think that's one of the reasons that we want to do this as well, is so that maybe people who listen to this now or in the future might have that aha moment and pull over and be like, oh yeah, oh my God, it makes total sense. You know, I mean, and hopefully we're doing it to a lot of people, entire highways of people just pulled over.
Yeah, just right now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of people pulled over. I don't know why. There's traffic is really like.
Damn Joel and Todd.
Oh yeah, yeah. The traffic person on the news is being like, I don't know. Nobody's driving. I don't know what's going on out there. Back to you, Judy.
Yeah.
Sorry, weird. But yeah, we should put a close on this, and I'm gonna go eat dinner.
Go eat your dinner. Interestingly enough, I was telling Steve about this the other day, and he's like, "Oh, I want to do one." So I'm doing another one with him next Wednesday. I think you're welcome to join and play with us.
It's funny because I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking you and I should keep doing this every Wednesday, but then start inviting people.
Inviting people's good.
And having a 3-way conversation. I mean, it's funny because I've been watching my son become absolutely infatuated with these bloody YouTube channels, which is just Twitch for kids who don't know how to use Twitch yet, of watching other people play Minecraft.
Yeah.
And they use funny voices, and there's like 4 or 5 of them, and they're talking and chatting and running around on the screen and talking about all the
things. Use funny voices, Todd?
Yes, please. I'll get a sock puppet who'll sometimes make an appearance. But this because it's the energy, right? And I think it's entertainment. You know what we're doing. We're trying to be here. We want it to be very interesting for anybody that listens, and high cadence. We all need to be on speed while we're doing this. And I mean, God, if I put Steve on here, and me on here, and then there's you as well. It was fucking blow people's minds.
But the reality is we did this because we just enjoy it, right? Like how many times have we been on a phone call and we've had these conversations for like an hour? Yeah. And we went, oh, that was great. We should just record that. And so this is what this is, right?
Sharing, we've found stuff and we're tired of keeping it to ourselves. And we know how we feed off each other and other people like us that talk about this stuff. So
we're too lazy for blog posts.
Yeah. And writing sucks.
Yeah. Writing sucks. Better.
So,
right on, man. Well, thanks for your time tonight. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Highlight of my week so far. You bet.
Okay. I'm literally going to go. Okay. I'm not just signing off podcast. I'm literally going to leave the meeting. I'm going to go eat.
Go eat. Say hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will. Say hi. Bye.
Bye.